Well, hello, creatives, community, and kind folks out there. Welcome to this week in RPG with DBJ. And this week, this is going to be a slight deviation from what we normally do. Now, normally each week we pick a subject, we take that subject, we subdivide it each day, Monster Monday, Discord Tuesday, World Building Wednesday, etc. This week, because of, well, my general love of science fiction and science fiction theory, we're going to talk transhumanism. If you notice in the thumbnail and the other thumbnail later this week, we're going to talk transhuman. That does not mean we're only going to be talk science fiction. And far from it, actually. What we're going to do this week is each day we're going to subdivide some of the theories and problems and creative potential and some of the controversies involved in talking about post-human and transhuman theories. And we're going to take that and figure out, like, does that have anything to do with my medieval, my ancient gaming tabletop RPG experience? Well, I would have to say to you that yes, or at least we're going to deep dive into it. And a number of people who participate live are into games such as Eclipse Phase and Coriolis and Transhuman GURPS and many other games that revolve around that kind of thing. Now, we will be giving some references. For example, maybe you might even bring up, say, Altered Carbon, that's on Netflix, and other intellectual properties in the media, whether it's books or novels and television shows and movies and such. So we will bring up some examples if you're unsure what we're talking about. Now, we also simulcast over at Fantasy Grounds College. So the classmates and collegiates over there are sitting in the boiler room. So if you join Fantasy Grounds College Discord, Fantasy Grounds College, join the Discord. Over on the left, slide down to the boiler room. That's where we hang out when we are not partaking in our classes or sitting in front of our administrators. It's where the cool kids hang out, or at least the nerdy ones. So today is Monster Monday, and listed on the thumbnail, a little tag, it says Immortality or Immorality. And oh, that's right. Dead Man the Storyteller says transhumanity's fate. The fate system has a transhuman setting. Yes. Now, in general, what is transhumanism? And while it can be complicated, and sure, you can do a little bit of Google or Wiki-Fu to find out what it means. I define it as technology, your wishes, the things you wish to come true in your life, meet enough technological or resources of expenditure of time, energy, and resources to make your wishes come true. And it is enough of a wish and enough of resources meeting together that those wishes can come true for many people, not just you, but for most of mankind. So does that includes our ability to live where we want to live, to change our bodies, to change our mind, to change our environment, and to change our social structures, our cultures, where we can literally add or delete or modify our own memories, to change, delete our bodies, and to basically shift and change our environment where we live. Do we want to live in deep oceans or zero gravity or around the corona of stars or deep space? Do we want to live by ourselves or packed in cans with everyone else? Do we even want to live with copies of ourselves and just surround ourselves in a big narcissistic pool of moisture, right? So that has to do with technology, but what does that have to do with, like, say, classic medieval fantasy Dungeons and Dragons? Well, it has a closer relationship than we think, and so we're going to talk about that and then talk about the some of the gamified elements and then expand those out. Now, Deadman says there's Post-Humanity. Eclipse Phase is published by Post-Human Studios. Yes, some would say there's interchangeability between the words transhuman and post-human. You'll also hear H plus or human plus as a moniker when we're talking about these things as well. Pelora says, does cosmetic surgery count as transhumanism? Again, that would be based on your own personal description of what that means. Some people to this day would say that plastic surgery counts as that. And then how deep of a plastic surgery are we talking? Are we talking, you know, implants or modifying someone who suffered from, say, major burns or birth defects? Or are we talking about pleasantries, getting rid of crow's feet and you know, bags under the eyes or something? Or how about making your ears into elf ears, or having feral teeth implanted in your face, into your jaw or something? You know, how far does cosmetic surgery go until you are breaking what we consider to be human into something else? Rickard says mutations, like from Witcher, or golems like Warforged, possession, all ways to alter your body to augment yourself. And that's exactly where I'd like to go with this, Rickard. Like, for example, in Dungeons and Dragons, we do have, say, we have a number of racial options, such as like golems, such as the Warforged, and other races where player characters are playing things that are not human. And how much of a relationship are we playing in the game to being human and not being human? For example, yeah, the damn elf posers. Yeah. You know, is it okay for someone to, say, use a spell-like effect to make themselves appear as another race and live their lives as another race? We've had here in the States where there have been controversies about individuals who are passing themselves off as another genetic racial type by also including trying to embrace the culture of a type that they didn't grow up in. And oh yes, so someone's bringing in some cyberpunk references. You know, them chummers are just weird. Oh man, yeah. It's really strange to think that in our lifetime, that in our modern day, for someone who is able to pass as another race, both visually and culturally, but people do it all the time and have done so for many generations, not just in our modern day, but for many generations. And not only is that strange, but also it can be a little strange for the people who change their opinions of the individuals they are in association with. For example, there are a number of actors and actresses who are able to portray different racial types, and some people have a problem with the race of an individual being changed, even though maybe, say, the role that they're playing has no racial. There's nothing about the role they're playing that has any specificity to the race that they are, you know? And so in our medieval gaming, whether a character has the ability to alter themselves through illusion, or alter their form, like into animals, or maybe they're playing, what's the Eberron race? Is it changeling or shifter? I guess both of them count. The Warforged as well is the third choice in Eberron, where you're not just human-like, you're just not human at all. For example, like many Warforged are not that old. Many of them can be as young as, I believe, 2 or 3 years, to as old as, say, 20 years, because of the Great War that happened in that setting. And for those who don't know, Warforged are sentient golems built from metal and wood and other fibers, and they are alive. They're not human at all. Is it the shifter that is born has the blood of doppelgangers, and the changelings that have the blood of lycanthropes, or is it the other way around? I don't quite remember what that is, but uh, using them as a base example, we have many players that want to play tieflings. The blood, they have a blood of something else in them, where they're outlander, outer world fiends and such. There are Asimar who have the blood of celestials. People play sorcerers who have the blood of, you know, dragons and other things. Yeah, Deadman says shifter is part lycanthrope, right? And so, and at the beginning of Dungeons and Dragons, we imagined, you know, half elves, half orcs, and that someone born into that situation didn't have a choice. Hey, I was just, you know, don't judge me on my race. I was born this way. But there are also people who play characters who have chosen to be that particular race. Whether yeah, Rickard says, lycanthropes who can half change would be quite transhuman, akin to swords in the in the arms cyberware. Absolutely. And especially if in your setting, or you have a player who says, hey, listen, my character chose to have the blood of a lycanthrope in their body. My character chose to make a pact with a fiend, and I was turned into a tiefling. There's even a setting known as the ravaged wastelands of Kryphoth, where there are individuals. There isn't a race of tieflings. Instead, people have kind of martyred themselves and drank the blood of fiends and turned themselves into like half humanoid, half demonic creatures to fight the evil that spread throughout the world. And so by making the choice to be something, maybe someone in your world, maybe someone made the choice to be a sentient golem, or was a wizard, or even a guard for like a wizard's conclave, and chose to give of themselves to be inside of this animated body. Or maybe they some people like to play the wizard who's lost their memory kind of thing, where maybe once they were a powerful wizard, and in an effort to save themselves, they cast their spirit out of their body before a great evil ripped their body asunder, and, you know, goes to look through them through the cosmos, and they awaken inside of someone else's body by choice. And maybe they've forgotten some of their memories or something like that. Maybe they have a little amnesia about their past, and slowly and surely, as they start uncovering things, which the altering of memories is another trope of transhumanism. In the setting of Ravnica, there are spells and spell-like abilities where you can take someone's memories and turn it into a physical object, and you can buy, sell, and trade them on the black market. Of course, many of those memories being secrets or knowledge that shouldn't be released about, like, hidden plans or things of that nature. And to buy and sell and trade those memories is also something emblematic of in transhuman, you know, far future transhumanism. Like to bring up the Arnold Schwarzenegger and Colin Farrell movies of wow, my brain just went away on the movies. Total Recall, wow. In Total Recall, which is which is definitely not me. Total Recall involves a person who, through their strange actions, ends up uncovering the fact that they themselves deleted their own memories, and they are now hunting for the deleted memories that they have, and why they have those memories, and why they have the skills. The Bourne movies are similar to that as well. And the person uncovers the fact that their true personality isn't the one that they have, you know. Rickard says willingly becoming a vampire is not too far removed from bioengineering yourself, but with some side effects. Exactly. Pelora says, I guess a lich is an immortal transhuman. I would definitely include that as well. A person who decides to overcome their intrinsic limitations to achieve some kind of power. And so the theme that I picked, immortality versus immorality, is this idea that, as kids, sometimes we talk about, if you had a superpower, what superpower would it be, right? Invisibility, flight, mind reading and mind control are way up there, telekinetic ability. If you read comic books, you start trying to break the rules. Well, I want to be like Wolverine. And someone's like, well, that's too many superpowers added together. And someone else is like, well, I want to be from Krypton or something. And you're like, wait, you can't have flight and invulnerability and laser eyes, but some of us realize that despite all those I wish I had powers, one of the ultimate powers is actually immortality. And functional immortality is that, especially amongst the many evils of our books and comic books and graphic novels and movies and television shows, that seems to be the one like at the top. Like, I don't want to just be invulnerable. I want to be immortal. And how do you achieve it? Rickard says, in many ways, Vecna is the ultimate evil transhuman monster. Absolutely. Trying to achieve godhood, divinity, trying to become a master of your own universe, whether it is a plane of existence, to be Asmodeus or Asmodeus, living in the ninth hell, is a transhuman individual. Orcus, I believe, was a mortal who's become literally the fiendish god of the undead. And many of these individuals are trying to achieve an immortality it's almost as if, like the Vecnas, the Orcuses, Orcusi, the Orcuses of the world, the Demogorgons and such, these otherworldly beings who have ties to the mortal plane, that when they achieve their immortality, they realize that there are hazards in the world that make their immortality extremely fragile. I'll give you an example. A human being finds out that vampires live on our earth, and they try to seek out a vampire to become immortal. But if you think about it, vampires have a far more guarantee of dying than anyone else in our world. And here's why. Every single vampire on the planet Earth will die, because the Earth will cool off. It will fall into the sun. Our sun is going to go nova, and there are existential threats to the Earth that will guarantee that every vampire will die in some horrible way, because they live forever on Earth, right? So obtaining immortality in many ways makes you look straight into your own mortality. So sure, you might be able to live through, say, 50,000 years of, I don't know, a nuclear winter when humanity starts to kill itself. But will you survive an asteroid impact? Will you survive nanotech swarms? Will you survive the cooling of the planet, or the cracking of the crust, or a new ice age, or the sun going nova, or radiation hitting the Earth? So a dead man says supernova is the death of a star. A nova is the birth. The more you know, the more you don't know. But yes, if our sun goes supernova, or it doesn't even have to be that, even go to that point. If it turns into a red dwarf, at some point the sun will cool off. And will that kill the immortals? If you were living whatever it is that made you immortal on our planet, would it kill you? Many people feel that by the time we are able to have functional immortality as opposed to true immortality, means that there are a number of steps to keep you alive, although those steps don't necessarily mean you'll still have the same mind or body. So functional immortality might be, in a technological sense, might be downloading or copying your brain into a cortical stack, i.e. like a portable thumb drive or DVR combination in the back of your head, or I don't know, in your chest or wherever it's held at. And then that in itself could be removed and placed into like a computer system, or you have something in your brain that constantly beams. It constantly, it has like a 3-second delay on beaming your consciousness into, say, a some kind of a core system or database or something of that nature. And so in a medieval sense, spells like clone, or spells like reincarnation, resurrection, spare the dying, all of your heal spells in many ways are functionally making someone immortal, where you are circumventing the natural order and staying alive. And how efficient that is, how common that is, how the fewer side effects. Like vampires have quite a bit of side effects, right? You know, the garlic, running water, holy symbols, ultraviolet light, needing blood, that kind of thing. They have a lot of side effects, but the fewer side effects, the more functionally immortal you could become. So Rickard says that's why they want to become vampires is space. Yeah, yeah. I mean, how does ultraviolet light affect vampires in space? I have zero idea. Does it have anything to do with our atmosphere or something? Yeah. Pillar, staying alive. Don't make me. I think I still have some bell bottoms. Dead Man says The Strain. Yeah, that was a good series. I think I watched the first 2 seasons of it. A series on USA Network was about vampires and their attempt to take over the world. I believe there was a BBC show about vampires that were trying to bring about, it was in modern day, and they were trying to bring about a nuclear holocaust by having enough debris thrown into the atmosphere so that vampires could walk amongst the population during the daylight. And I don't remember the name of that series. I want to say it happened in the mid 2000s. But yeah, 30 Days of Night. 30 Chase looked out. Keep on moving. Hey, I don't want to get tagged by YouTube. You make too many music references, and their transhumanist AI will find me. But 30 Days of Night is kind of a transhuman thing where the vampires go to a place so northern on the planet that there's literally 30 days of night for them to hunt. Now, mind you, they were rather bestial and mindless, but the same could be said for that, right? Yeah. Rickard says, running water. Does that mean comets is a real hazard for multiple reasons to a vampire? Could it be? I wonder about that. Do they carry with them straws? Because in a zero gravity environment, they got to suck up the blood as it like floats around in little globules. Oh, the movie Tesla Ranger brings up the movie Ultraviolet. They were the hemophages, people genetically modifying themselves to be vampiric. Maybe the idea of being immortal brings with it, hemophagic limitations. So you have to absorb blood from others because your own blood cells break down, or you're unable to maybe produce blood cells from your own marrow. That would be interesting. Oh, the British television show, thank you, Tesla, was the British vampire TV series Ultraviolet. That was the name of it? Why didn't I remember that? But yes, the idea was a plot by vampires to infiltrate various levels of society, military, political, corporate, social, to bring about enough unrest to cause a nuclear holocaust, for the sole purpose of blasting enough debris into the air that it would blot out the sun. And I was like, ooh, nasty. And then human beings would find shelter underground, and they could just feed off the human beings as cattle underground and such. Dead Man says Van Helsing on Sci-Fi is about vampires and how they are geoengineering the world so they can be out more often. Exactly. And we can think about geoengineering as terraforming. Very much, if we relate this to, say, fantasy settings, much like, say, a fey creatures and fiendish creatures, not only do they bring themselves, but they start to bring their own worlds with them. The, the blood war between the abyss and the nine hells has a lot to do with that as well. Like, it's creeping. The abyss itself as a outer plane wants to invade other realms. And we also know the trope of a thin membrane between worlds and fiendish creatures spilling forth, and not only do they spill forth, but where they step, they start to infect the land itself, is kind of considered like a terraforming act, a terraformic act, I suppose. Tesla Ranger says, I'm not sure about the nuclear plot, though. It's been years since I've seen it. And for me as well, I for some reason, I just remember that plot and I relate it to that television show. I could be wrong. Which I normally am, but I remember a plot like that being unveiled when it came to vampires in a television show, and that's the first one that came to mind. Now, since we're talking about immortality versus immorality, because today is Monster Monday, I wanted to bring up the idea of how we are able, when it comes to population centers and our own lifespans, how we start to rationalize away our morality due to our immortality. So let me post this to you, okay? Many questions arrive when it comes to things like, back in the 80s, there was a book called The Book of Questions, and the Book of Questions had a lot of morality tales in it. So one question, and this question is also brought up into in the philosophy, and it's the idea of a train, an out of control train or something is running down a track. Train, trolley, doesn't matter what it is. Just know that it's lethal. And someone is standing on the track, and you have the ability to flip a switch and make that train divert onto another track. Now, the person standing on the track, there's one individual. You can move the switch, and if it diverts away from that one individual, it will kill 5 others if you move the switch. Okay. And so many people will say, well, if 5 people are going to live and one person dies and it's guaranteed that it will kill someone, I'm not going to flip the switch. It's just going to kill that person. Imagine switching the population. So there are 5 people standing on the track and one person is on the divergent. So if you flip the switch, it will kill only one person. But if you do nothing, it will kill 5. What do you do? You know? And so that is the moral question, right? Some people say, well, if you do nothing, you're complicit. Other people will say, well, if I do nothing, that is what would normally happen. It's not my fault, and rationalize their own ethics and morality. I don't know the difference between ethics and morality. I believe ethics are a group thing and morality is singular. I don't know. I know I'm screwing it up. So sorry about that, guys. Rickard says Lich's phylacteries equal cortical stacks. Not as a question, but yeah, if Lich's phylacteries equals cortical stacks, hell yeah. Sure, they may be constructed and designed through different reasons, but yeah. What's the other one? There's a wizard's spell. I believe it's the spell clone, but I believe there's some other method where, it's the wizard spell where you create a holographic image of yourself that's able to walk around, and you're able to use your spell effects through your holographic image, which is kind of a shortstop between becoming a lich, right? That very much operates in the same technological sense, using magic and such. Pillar says, there's a game that just finished on Kickstarter is based on that trolley thing. Yeah, maybe people shouldn't be on train tracks. Maybe that's true. Maybe people should get off of those tracks. But that's the moral. The idea is to create a moral quandary. And a lot of times when you tell someone something, you have a moral quandary. Like, hey, you have to save 10 people in a cave, and there's only two directions. If you go down the left side, there's a 50-50 chance you and everyone will die or everyone will live. If you go down the right path, you are guaranteed one half the people will die, but you will survive. What do you do? Right. And it's like, then people, thank you, Dead Man, the bring posts in the Fantasy Grounds Discord channel down here in the DBJ chat in the boiler room, puts in the ethics versus morals thing. Of course, I'm sure it's many pages and read it, but yes, there is a difference between ethics and morals. And a lot of times when you post those things, post those quandaries, I don't know if you notice, but people will start questioning things like, well, are they children? Are they elderly? Can they move? If I do nothing, what will happen to me? Is it illegal? Is it, there's all these other questions. It's like, no. Don't change what's going on. What decision do you make? And a lot of people try to like, well, if this thing was happening and maybe I would, and maybe this and blah, blah, blah. Right. Yeah, like Rickard says, like, aha, 5 people have a greater chance to see and hear the oncoming train. I have hacked the question, which is what we try to do, right? We try to hack and therefore justify our moral ethical decisions. I know I'm mixing the two. One of them is correct, one of them isn't, so I'm 50% right. So the idea is sometimes we try to hack our own decisions when it comes to violating our own ethics or morality, or the assumed ethics or morality of society in general, to the point at which, yeah, bag holding. I bring out the big tunnel drill out of my bag of holding. Yeah, yeah. Rick says, I Kirk Kobayashi Maru to the whole thing. Yeah. I hear you. Now, Tesla Ranger says morality equals good, neutral, and evil, and ethics are lawful, neutral, and chaotic. So ethics are what society presumes, and morality is what we assume. Now, in many ways, a lot of us hack things to the point where we justify, for example, the deaths of children or the deaths of injured people or sick people or something, right? We'll say to ourselves, well, those people would die anyway, so performing this act is okay. Or, yeah. Yeah, Rickard says the problem with these questions is that they lack enough data input, and and you don't have any way of solving that with the data involved. Well, it's not that we don't have a method of solving it. I think as humanity, we have a problem because we are data driven, and that is very different than, say, it separates us from animals. And so the further we progress with our own, the more brilliant we are, the harder time we have solving those situations. If you, no offense, but if you take somebody who's very much like self-centered, insular, lacks imagination, doesn't think much more than 5 minutes before their face, they would have extremely easy time making that decision. It's the classic. This was done as a movie and also done in Twilight Zone. It is someone comes to your door, offers you a box with a button. They say, if you press this button, someone you don't know will die. That person, if that person you don't know dies, you will get $1 million. Do you press the button? And some people who don't think, they're like, $1 million, someone I don't know dies, whatever, right? Who cares? Those of us who think long and hard about it go, well, wait a minute, because the story, of course, ends, spoiler alert, the person leaves after this couple presses the button. When the person leaves, it comes back and gets the button. Of course, they do all kinds of things. They look inside the box. They try to look up who this person is. They try to follow him, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. At the end, the person gets the box, and they get their $1 million. And they say, hey, by the way, where are you going with the button? And they say, oh, don't worry about it. I'm taking it to someone you don't know, right? So the idea is, for many of us, which is why many of us brilliant people don't commit many crimes. Yeah, dun 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 dun, right? Is the reason why many brilliant people don't commit a lot of crimes is because we think of the ramifications. We process in our head, what could go wrong in this situation? Let's see, if I robbed a bank, how would they kill me? How much time would I spend in jail? Who would get hurt? How would I get a gun? You know, what kind of life would I have? Would I mind being on the run? What country would I have to move to? Would the police come after me? How many people would I have to bribe? How would I hide? How would I launder the money? Etc. And so we don't do those things, right? And this has nothing to do with the simple fact of maybe I just don't want to commit a crime. Sometimes it's deeper than that for many of us. And so the immortality versus immorality thing is, imagine having that same conversation, but you're suffering from a terminal disease, right? Someone suffering from a terminal disease is like, you know what? My rolling the dice on whether I live or die in something, it doesn't quite matter to me anymore, right? Robbing that bank, jumping out of a plane, deep sea diving, whatever the case may be, that dangerous thing I thought of, I'm going to roll the dice on that because I don't really have much longer to live. So cooking that meth, hell yeah, right? that whole the Breaking Bad television series was all based on what do I have to lose and what do I gain from it? And a person making that choice. And so oftentimes some of our greatest bad guys are good guys in disguise, right? Yeah. Tesla Rangers, quote, if I make one mistake, how badly with this plan will this plan fail, right? So oftentimes some of our greatest bad guys are good guys, and they are rationalizing the ethics and morality of the decision they're making and the people they're around, i.e. Thanos, right? I'm going to kill, literally seek to destroy half the life in the entire universe for their own good. And how do I do it? How do I do it? Do I make the choice for myself? Do I separate myself from society to make that choice so that I'm living by myself to do this thing? What about others? Some people rationalize what we consider in modern day very dangerous or nasty things. For example, pedophilia, people rationalizing rape and murder, rationalizing torture. There is a movie, it's a hard movie to watch, but there's a movie called Unthinkable. I was about to say Unbreakable. It's called Unthinkable, about a government, captures a gentleman who has information about a bombing plot in the United States. And how far do you go to torture a person, or do you make that decision to do these terrible things to this person and to their loved ones to save many lives? How much do you compromise? And so some of our greatest bad guys have made decisions that if we were in the same situation, it's a coin toss as to what we would do. Rickard says the problem is also that if this happens, the train example in real life, you would be able to see the things happening, so you would automatically have more detail. I agree. And some of that would be the ramifications of our decision, right? If we knew there would be no ramifications for what we did, would that change versus, say, possibility of going to jail? For example, if you were in our own world, if a terrorist were to hijack a plane full of innocent people, would you as a pilot be able to shoot that plane down? Would you be able to make that decision on your own? Would you make that decision if someone ordered you to? Would you be able to give the order to make someone else make the decision to, say, shoot a plane down that is clearly, or maybe not so clearly, being piloted by someone for nefarious means? How many times do you make that decision to kill, say, for example, eliminate innocence to go after someone who is a murderer, which tends to be the issue with drone pilots and suffering PTSD and being given those instructions, right? In some ways, PTSD may be a person's ethics and morality combating with their actions. In a strange way, you could make the argument that it makes them more empathic, more closely tied with their feelings and the dissonance that it creates. So many of our true bad guys, the liches, the vampires, the people who summoned evil forces from other worlds, the necromancers, may have started out with extremely good intentions. The lich that's like, I just want to live long enough to bring order and peace to the world, and you're just in my way from creating that. You know, it's the king that makes a dark pact with an evil force to protect their people from the ravages of the world until it gets to the point where they no longer want to listen to people arguing against them, but they just want to do their thing. It could even be the rebel forces out for good who eventually start to compromise their intentions, much as many people would associate, say, modern day terrorism. There are people who wish for good intentions and have slowly and surely pushed themselves down a path of dark and evil things, at least as pertains to our modern society, doing more and more heinous acts to achieve a goal that they initially started out as something good, maybe freedom or justice for their own people, right? Whatever that may be. Willow Packer, the storyteller, says, also, how does I don't see the rest of your comment. Please continue to put that in there, Willow Packer. Rickard says, if only he would have thought logically about it. Like, talk about Thanos, I'm thinking, I could kill half the universe, or I could double the resources in the universe. We all thought about that one, right? Like but remember, the first people were like, Thanos is a pretty good villain. He had a point. Wait a minute, hold on. That doesn't make any sense. Couldn't he double the size of the universe, or double the resource ability, or maybe have the amount of resources humanity needs to live, right? There's so many things, or double the resultant outcome of the resources we already have, meaning food produces twice as many nutrients, whatever the case might be, right? If you could snap your fingers and change the entire nature of the universe, you could have literally, it doesn't even have to double. It could have said, I'm going to make the universe infinite. Bam. I'm going to make resources in the universe infinite. Bam. And done it. Or could have just said, I'm going to make everyone live happy and peaceful lives in any manner in which that needs to be. Bam. But didn't do it, right? And again, sometimes when you have a lack of information, but you're on a path of justice, one overrides the other, right? How long do you sit and wait, and how long do you sit in your analysis paralysis, and how long do you act? How long does it take you to act? Someone says, there was a very tense scene in the movie American Sniper, in which the gentleman has his sniper rifle pointed at a small child, and the child, it goes to try to pick up a rocket launcher, and his bosses are just like, you're like, dude, you have free reign to fire at enemies, all of our enemies, doesn't matter, just do it. Well, don't sit back and question. And so this, how long does this individual who has the ability to give life and death goes, okay, kid, don't pick it up, drop it. Maybe he's not going to be able to pick it up. Maybe it won't happen. Do I kill this person? Do I not? What will I suffer? And I believe those things are probably going through an individual's mind until they have no choice but to press the button, right? They have no choice but to pull the trigger or to make that decision with a lack of data. And sometimes it's not the act, but it's the ramifications of that act. And I like the idea of, in a tabletop role-playing sense, of playing with the data, right? You have a lack of data, and this person makes this decision. It's the warlock path, right? It's not the clerical path, it's the warlock path. It's the, I demand power to solve the situation. and a great power comes to you and says, I will give you the power to change what has happened. You just owe me a thing, right? Yep. Just for 2 seconds. I didn't turn on the fish tank. Sorry, baby. Okay. All right, baby. Okay. So, Rickard goes on to say, Thanos is what happens when you roll a nat 1 on making plans to save the universe. Check. Yeah, it's like, what's your intelligence? 27. Wow. All right, make an intelligence check. And nat 1. What? Willow Packer says most people convinced to do horrible things if an authority in uniform tells them to. That was an actual experiment that was performed. I believe it was made into a movie and a documentary as well. However, the same experiment that proved that also proved most people won't do those things without an authority. You are absolutely correct. And oftentimes, and mind you, yes, we are talking about all these theoretical things, but in our role-playing or tabletop role-playing game, the Milgram experiment. Thank you, Dead Man, for putting that in the Discord, the Fantasy Grounds College Discord over in the boiler room. Go down to the left, slide down the boiler room. You heard what I said. Anyway, the Milgram experiment was the one where they took general individuals, experiment, I believe college age, and gave them roles, made some of them prisoners. And no, there are 2 experiments. One experiment was taking average citizens, making some of them prisoners and others guards, and the guards ended up overlording over the prisoners, and the prisoners wanted to rebel. The other experiment was a fictitious element where someone in a room hidden behind a wall is hooked up to electrodes, and a person has to sit and ask this individual questions. And every time they get a question wrong, they have to hit a button and electrocute them. And each time they got a question wrong, they had to increase the voltage higher and higher and higher until theoretically they were putting enough voltage to them to kill this individual. And a lot of those people that did the experiment continued to do so anyway. Oh, Rickard says, got to bow out in 9 minutes. Sorry, no, that's all right, man. Now, these experiments, we can definitely pull in these experiments for our tabletop RPG settings, right? How many innocent people would willingly become, vampires or give of themselves to a fiendish pact to bring about so-called good in their community? How many people would willingly do the wrong thing if they felt that the wrong thing would bring to their family, their friends, their society, their culture, to the greater world, something they perceive as good? And who's to say that that good isn't a temporary? That good could last a week, a month, a year, 50 years, 100 years. But what happens at the end of that period of time? For example, would a king forcibly draft all the young people of fighting age into a war to stop a undead or goblinoid invasion? Would they go into people's homes and take away their young people and their children to train them as Spartan warriors? Even in the movie 300, the beginning of that movie, we love ourselves to watch the Spartans win in their battle, but we forget the fact that the children that were offered up to the Spartans, many of them were tossed on rocks. The children that were inspected before they even were barely weaned away from their parents, from the mothers and such, were tossed upon rocks. Many of them died before reaching adulthood in the training of the children in the first place, right? So which one is the better or the worse for it? And these are great story elements we can add to our individuals in our game. As a matter of fact, Pelora says tabletop RP is a great place. Role playing is a great place to explore these morals. I'm never going to have to make that decision, but I can put myself in a place to do so. Exactly. It's just, I mean, what we're playing a game, right? We got dice, character sheets, and we can always make characters for ourselves or NPCs that, or even multiple NPCs and characters who make these decisions, and we have a safe place to make those decisions with literally not harming anyone. And that is why role-playing has been embraced by so many, where once it was satanic panic, now it's being embraced by psychological and medical communities, and to help people with behavioral problems. Dungeons and Dragons is played so often in prison. You guys just don't know how much role-playing tabletop games are embraced in prison, to the point where, and I know this for a fact, that there are literally for a fact, one of my best friends was incarcerated, and they come up with so many unique ways to come up with randomizers and dice and character sheets. They pass down the role-playing books. They even ask for books and supplies to play role-playing games, because it allows them to express their anger and frustrations and dreams inside of role-playing. And so having more morality cases are the issue. Yeah. James Lindell says cards as dice, cards, ripped up pieces of paper, soap has been carved into 20-sided dies. People have done like just like small scraps of paper. There are well, they've used books with just putting random numbers on each page of the book and flipping to random pages. I mean, there's so many things. You'd be hard pressed to find the creativity it takes for people incarcerated to come up with randomizers just to play some Dungeons and Dragons or superhero games. And the one of my best friends who was incarcerated, there was a gentleman, a lot of them, the stress of being incarcerated, and the people who are incarcerated, a lot of them have behavioral problems. And he said there was a guy that had anger issues, and their Dungeons and Dragons group got together and they included this guy with anger issues. He couldn't stand losing, and until he was able to break through, and they included him in the game until he was able to embrace a different way of thinking. So it's very good. Plura says, I saw someone get out of their car, put on a yellow jacket, and control traffic to get their friend driving through at a theme park. It negatively affected me, but was so funny to be angry about. So are you saying someone? So you're saying someone faked being a traffic attendant to get someone through like a theme park? Basically, they put on a yellow vest and pretended to be directing traffic. That's hilarious. Pelora says, Invisible Sun, quote, amid the strange and surreal, the only thing that matters is meaning. In a world where anything is possible, how stops being a pertinent question, but why remains vital. Yeah. Wow, that's awesome. But yes, when let's even, before we end this, let's take up the paladin, the paladin conundrum. Okay. We know that paladins in modern gaming are basically, they're no longer paladins. They're basically oath takers and oath breakers, right? They take an oath to uphold a particular code of conduct. But in the past, paladins were upon this. Okay, let's take ourselves three paladins of three different, say, three different orders or three different rankings. You have yourself your volunteer, your newly appointed paladin. You have your mid-level 5 to 10 year expert, and you have your 20+ year veteran. All right. And you have a community of 1 million people you have to defend. And an order comes from the king and says, I need these 1 million people that live in my city-state defended. The paladins get together, they wear their armor, they roll out on their, I don't know, their Pegasi or something, and they find out that There are scouts that are coming close. There are small villages on the outskirts of the city. There are crops. There are innocent people who are not inside of the walls of the people. There are 1 million people. All right. One of those paladin, the one with 20 plus years, says, close the gates. I understand there's a hordes of 50,000 plus swarming towards our city. We have to protect the city of 1 million people. Anyone who has ignored our orders and not come into the city, close the gates. That is the good thing to do. The one who's only had 5 to 10 years, very lawful and very good, says, I'm going to take with me a squad of individuals. Give me 50 soldiers. We are going to go out and we are going to go to a village, the closest one with the most food, and we are going to go out there and we are going to defend them. Close the city gates, and if they get back by, say, 3 days hence, let them go into the gates. If not, close the gates and leave all of us outside. The new member might go, this sounds exactly horrible. I'm going to leave everyone and I'm going to go out and try to kill the scouts and go into the village, and I'm going to defend the village, and I'm going to bring those innocent people back. Damn you for wanting to even think about closing the gates. We should never close the gates and protect those individuals. In that sense, the paladin problem, every one of them is right? But depending on your point of view, every one of them is wrong. And a lot of that has to do with our perception. It is our, is it a matter of the data? Is it a matter of how many people you're protecting? Is it a matter of how long it would take to protect them? And who is responsible? Would you give yourself over to the proper authorities if you were to break the rules to protect a lot of people? Would you give yourself over to the authorities if you were the one either ordered or decided to close the gates when you could see on the outside that those innocent people are scrambling to get inside the walls? Very much, what would you do in the zombie apocalypse? We explore that a lot. So the immortality often has to do with how long will we live? How long would others live? The longer we live, do we start to lose bits and pieces of our humanity? Do we start to erode away or start to turn the dial on our ethics and morality because of the length of our lives or the length and lives of others? And I feel like that's a great thing to pull on. So we're going to continue this talk. Not a lot of details about creatures and monsters on this Monster Monday, but we're going to bring up some other concepts, larger concepts like that, as we move on during the week. Tomorrow's Discord Tuesday. Please join us then. Guys, thank you very much. Everyone, have a great day.